something, and she died. And who takes over but Elizabeth? A bunch of her supporters. Now, at a time like this is always dangerous. Who's going to get the crown when it's not quite certain who deserves the crown? There was Lady Jane Grey. Henry's other sister had a daughter, and she was legitimate, Lady Jane Grey. And a lot of people thought she should be the queen, right? Not this redheaded, crazy girl. She was not legitimate. But Elizabeth's supporters came and gathered around her and delivered her a ring and said, "The queen is dead. Long live the queen." So she's not a queen. She's a frivolous young gal who barely made it with her head, because a lot of people want to get rid of her and want the monarchy to go to somewhere else. There was always powerful families, and they wanted their group to be in charge. This one wanted their group to be in charge. Doesn't that sound like politics today? It hasn't changed. If you will read history, you will see everything has happened over and over and over again. It just keeps happening. There was never peace. There were always wars. But Henry VIII had started his quest for power. Now his daughter's on the throne. She's made it. She was madly in love with a man named Robert Dudley, I think. I think that was his name. Well, anyway, they were in love. If you saw the movie with Kate Blanchett about Elizabeth, she had a wild affair with Robert, or Robbie, she called him, her love. That's questionable. Some license was taken to make that movie. As all movies about historical figures, they always add a lot of stuff in there to make it exciting. So they had to get a little, monkey business in that movie. But no one's really sure, because she was called the Virgin Queen. Now that is a big question. Why was she called the Virgin Queen? Was it because she decided, well, now that I'm the queen, I'm going to stay a virgin? Or was it she never was a virgin because she had the affair with Robert? Or did she have an affair with Robert? We'll never know, because every historian says something different. We'll never know. But one thing that Robert made a mistake in that he was married, and that's another thing that some historians say. She eventually told him to get married because she wanted some alliance there. Other places, other historians say no. He did it on his own to get some power because he was so tired of waiting. Because Elizabeth was just like her mother. She wasn't going to give in. She just wouldn't give in and marry Robert. So Robert finally got married. Whether he was forced to or not, we're not sure. But his wife was murdered. And everybody thought it was Robert, because he wanted to get rid of the wife because he wanted to marry Elizabeth. So you got to figure out, well, why did he get married in the first place? That's where all the intrigue comes in. That we're really not sure, and every historian has their own idea. But anyway, that's what happened. And the whole country, it was a scandal. Everybody thought that he killed his wife to marry Elizabeth. Well, Elizabeth she couldn't marry a man who had so much scandal attached to him. So whatever he did it for, or if he did it, she still didn't marry him. And she declared herself, "I will be a virgin forever. I am the Queen of England, and no one is going to make me marry anybody." Even though she was presented with many suitors. Her idea was to raise England to a superpower. But here comes the Armada. Now, do you ever remember how the Spanish Armada was defeated? Here comes Philip back again. Now he's loose. His wife Mary's dead. He's still trying to get England back into Catholicism, and he's still just to have the power. They were always. Every country has always been trying to spread their power, trying to acquire more land. This is, it's never a new thing. It's been going on since the beginning of history. This guy's trying to get that country. That guy's trying to get this country. Well, Philip was still aimed at England. He still wanted it. So what did he do? He built a fabulous armada, and he decided to sail and capture England. Well, actually, she really wasn't that prepared militarily for this big invasion. But circumstances happened, and it was destroyed by Elizabeth's few little puny ships, got wrecked on shore. The entire armada was destroyed. What a feat that was, right? The whole armada was destroyed, and now the Queen is sitting pretty. Nobody is strong enough to attack her, and she starts building her own ships. And we've heard of Sir Walter Raleigh and she had many, many favorites. Many favorites. She loved to be flirted with. She loved having her little admirers and her favorites. And the ones who charmed her the most were told to go on these ships and go plunder the seas and bring the wealth back. Now, they weren't officially pirates, because pirates kept their loot, right? Buried it on a Caribbean island somewhere, and they had treasure maps and all that stuff. So it was unofficially sanctioned that these buccaneers would go out, raid other ships, bring the wealth back to England. This was extremely successful. She amassed more money than, and left the treasury when she died in good shape. So, here she is now, at the height. She's strong and has conquered all these islands and she's just one of the strongest, militarily not, but on the sea. She was one of the strongest. Because Holland used to be the leader of that. Sweden, which we've been just to. Sweden started it all with the Vikings. Then the power went over to Holland, and they were in charge of the Baltic area and most of the seas. They were great seamen who built wonderful, great ships. Do you remember when I told you that Peter went over there to learn how to build ships? Because Holland knew how to build them the best. They had a tremendous naval building program in the shipyard. Now it was Elizabeth's turn. So the power kept changing. And Elizabeth kept the power there for many, many years. But what happened, she's always a little afraid. Remember that little Jane Grey, that little cousin of hers? And that other cousin who's up in Scotland now? She's got a right to the crown too, according to a lot of people. And Jane Grey, so what does she do? Right at the beginning, Jane Grey, she was 16, I think 16, off with the head, get rid of her. I don't think she was maybe quite as bloody as her father, but whenever she had an enemy, she got rid of her. Lady Jane Grey said, please, her last words are, please dispatch me quickly, which I'm sure they did. She was just a sweet young gal that had just a pawn, that's all she was. But the problem was, Mary couldn't stop because she was a queen. You don't want to be setting precedents, cutting queens' heads off, right? Because it might give someone an idea to do it to you. And it happened many times. Remember Louis and Marie Antoinette? When he was guillotined, off with the head. So and there was Charles I, he was beheaded by Oliver Cromwell. So there already was a precedent. And when Charles I was beheaded, Peter's father was just distraught that they could do such a thing to an emperor or a king. Other kings and queens did not like to see kings and queens beheaded and murdered because it set a bad precedent for themselves. They wanted to be in power. Her ministers constantly are telling her, she had Lord Burleigh in the beginning. He was her prime minister. And Lord Burleigh kept saying, you must marry. You must get rid of Mary, Queen of Scots. You must have her executed. You must marry. You must get rid of Queen of Scots. This went on her whole life. And finally she says, I will not marry. But she finally gave in. And Mary, Queen of Scots was imprisoned for many, many, many years up in Scotland. And she finally had her beheaded. And she got the axe. And the axe didn't cut her head off right.